Welcome to the Highland League Weekly Friday preview show, where we're going to run the rule over the weekend's games. I'm Jamie Durent, and joined by the law colleagues rather than the law brothers, Callum and Danny. Callum, we have the first game this weekend in the Highland League, where we've got our cameras. Nairn County against Strathspey, the battle of the bottom two at the minute. I mean, both sides desperately kind of need a win from somewhere.
Well, both sides have failed to win so far this season, so unless it's a draw, you would suggest something has to give, that old saying. But both two sides really struggle to keep clean sheets, as well as we've seen over the course of the season so far. So really, it doesn't take an expert to predict that you'd expect it to be a few goals. I do think for Strathspey, it's maybe a slightly more important game in terms of them picking up something, because they have played a couple of games more than Nairn, and if they were to lose, the gap would open up to 5 points. And I know it's early in the season, but you don't really want to be getting detached. And then on the flip side, if they were to win it, they'd go above Nairn, and it would probably give everyone a bit of a lift and something to build on, because I think their issue this season is a couple of times they've had decent results drawn with Devon Vale, drawn with Inverurie, so they haven't really been able to build on that at all.
I think as well it's obviously a good opportunity for Stephen Mackay early into his time as Nairn manager, only appointed earlier this month, but it's a good chance for him to pick up a win that he'll be looking for. You would think that Nairn's squad is probably too strong. They should be higher up the league with the players that they have at their disposal. But yeah, I mean, a huge game for both clubs, and intriguing to see how it pans out.
Looking at some of the other games, Stephen Mackay's former side, Brora Rangers taking on Forest at home. The Andrew McRae derby, if you will.
The Stephen Mackay derby, if you will. Lots of links, but it's interesting. That's another sort of test for Forest, because won quite convincingly last weekend, up to 7th in the table. They've ticked along quite nicely, but then playing the likes of Brora is a totally different proposition, so it'll be interesting to see how they get on.
I think as well, I mean, Forest have won 3 of their last 4, but all 3 of those games were at home, so I mean, this is a tougher proposition for them, but I guess in Ben Barron they've got a guy that scored 5-minute hat-trick, so they'll be going there with a lot of confidence, but it'll be a tough test for them up at Dudgeon Park.
Clark heading to Princess Royal Park to take on Devon Vale. So you saw Clark last weekend. Callum, I mean, will they be kind of buoyed after that victory over Lossiemouth?
They should be, to an extent, although Jordan McDonald was kind of quite quick to say that he thinks they'll need to play an awful lot better if they're to beat Devon Vale. He didn't think Clark were particularly great last weekend, but they found a way to win. Devon Vale, Craig Stewart's tired of saying it, but they haven't really been getting the breaks of late. And I mean, last week they sort of seemed to be in the game against Forest, and then lose 3 goals in quick succession, and that sort of ends all hope you've got to get in something. So I suppose for Devon Vale, probably it's the old cliche, but they need to be better in both boxes, I would suggest.
Obviously mentioned Lossie there. They're away to Inverurie Locals. Is it a game that could quite well be pretty tight?
I think so. I mean, Richard Hastings was very disappointed with his side's performance in their 0-0 draw with Huntly, so he'll be looking for a bit more this weekend. And Lossiemouth, I guess, have been slightly inconsistent this season because they've had their good weeks, but they would have been, disappointed last weekend with how the game at Clark panned out. They would have probably been targeting another 3 points there, but yeah, that's another game that you would think locals at home will start as favourites, but Lossiemouth have shown that on their day they can turn up and give a good account of themselves, and they'll be going into that thinking that they can take the points as well.
And the final Highland League game of the weekend is Rothes against Keith. I mean, how's Ross Jack felt about Rothes' performances of late, Callum?
Well, it's kind of difficult because they've sort of played well at times and played poorly at times, and I think it was they started slowly last week against Buckie and got punished, but then came right back at them and very nearly drew level, having been 3-0 down. But I think in quite a few games this season he's felt they've been a bit slow to start, so I think they'll need to be at it against Keith from the outset, because Keith, although last weekend the game got away from them a wee bit against Brechin, they've shown in various games this season that they're a very capable side, and they've got a bit of pace at the top end of the park as well, which can at any level can cause problems. So I could see that being quite close, actually.
I think as well, if you look at Rothes' run of results, they've only been, I think, in the last 6 or 7 games, only 1 goal away from either turning a defeat into a draw or a draw into a win. So they've been involved in a lot of tight, tense games, which hints that their form might be about to pick up.
On to the Scottish Cup second round ties, and the other game that we've got our cameras at this weekend, Wick Academy against Ben Burb. Are you looking forward to that great trip to the far north?
Can't wait, Jamie, can't wait. But there's some really, although I would have liked a few more teams in the second round, there's some really interesting ties and some good ties on paper, and we'll be at Wick and we can't film the actual game, unfortunately, but we'll be giving you a flavour of the day. And on paper anyway for Wick, although they haven't been the best of form lately, it's quite a good draw, I would suggest. Ben Burb are mid-table in the West of Scotland League First Division, so that's not, we see elsewhere other teams playing Scottish League sides or top Lowland League sides. Ben Burb, I'm sure they'll be a capable outfit, but they're not at that level, so hopefully Wick can get through to the third round again. I mean, at Harmsworth Park as well, when you factor in travelling, etc., is the more I look at it, the more I do feel it's weighted in the Scorries' favour, certainly.
The interesting thing that I read about Ben Burb when doing my research was that they're managed by, I think, Paul Lovering, who was a former Airdrie defender but succeeded his father, Frank. So it was like father passed it down to the son, the running of the team. So just something a bit different there. But you would think in that game that I would fancy Wick at home to get through that one. So it would be a huge game for them.
I think it's their biggest game. Gary Manson would say it as well. It's probably their biggest game of the season, because realistically, unless they're to go on a run in the League Cup, they're not going to win anything this season. They could go on a run in the League Cup, obviously, but that's their sort of last avenue in terms of winning something. So to make progress in the Scottish Cup would be a big deal for the Caithness club. And you were mentioning father and sons. We've got a good father and son story for you with one of the other ties, Fraserburgh against Stranraer, because Stranraer came up to Belsley, but the last time the sides met in the Scottish Cup, 1998, Fraserburgh went down to Stair Park, and Jimmy Young played for Fraserburgh, one of his many Broch appearances, but his son Paul will be playing against them this weekend, and he'll be hoping for slightly better luck, because the last time I think the Broch lost, we heard from Chris Hunter, they lost 2-1, but at home I think might fancy them for an upset this time personally, and if Paul were to score, that would add to the anecdote I've just told you.
Well, I'm going to say it's going to be a fair old trip for Stranraer, isn't it? It's just about one of the longest they could have gotten in the cup.
Well, it is, and adding to that story of 25 years ago, Stranraer, I'll hope they don't have the same fate that befell Fraserburgh on that occasion, because again, I was hearing that on that occasion, Fraserburgh preparing properly and everything. The chairman, the late Jim Adams, he took everyone down on the Friday night. They travelled, stayed overnight, bit of light training on the Saturday morning, got back to the hotel to leave for Stranraer. Game was postponed due to a waterlogged pitch, so they had to do it all again the following weekend. So hopefully no such mishaps on this occasion for either side.
I'm sure the microclimate of Belsley will hold up for both sides on Saturday. There's a couple of intriguing ties, particularly involving teams at the top. I mean, at the top of the kind of respective divisions, Brechin still in Albion, who would have been an SPFL game not too long ago. And I mean, Brechin will probably fancy their chances against anyone just now. And then you've got Bucky against Open Goal, Broomhill. Again, two sides that have started the season really well, and then two managers in Graham Stewart and Simon Ferry, two of the more colourful characters in Scottish football.
Very much so. Two passionate individuals, and the dugouts being positioned as they are at Bucky, I'd think there'd be a few fireworks on Saturday, but I think that Open Goal are clearly a good outfit. They're third in the Lowland League. They beat Brora in round one, but I do think, again, home advantage is a big thing for Bucky. You know, they play, Open Goal play AstroTurf pitch at Broadwood, and like to, very much from what I've gathered about them, very much a sort of passing through the thirds game, whereas coming to Victoria Park, it won't be quite as easy for them to do that, and especially the way Bucky sort of get right up in the face of the opposition as well probably makes that more difficult, so I'd be edging towards Bucky. With the Brechin tie, it's a great test for Brechin. I think they've kind of their ambitions to return to the Scottish League and playing the side that's top of League 2. Good gauge of where you are, how you get on, and they did beat Stirling Albion on penalties in the Challenge Cup, so they've a bit of confidence, I'd imagine, going in there as well.
Yeah, but Stirling Albion have been going really well under Darren Young, so it is a real test. I think that's quite a difficult one to call. Actually, they probably both are. But yeah, I think out of all the ties, you'd probably fancy, a few of the Highland League teams to get through. So I think this could be quite a, don't want to be the kiss of death, but I do. You can see quite a few of the Highland League teams progressing.
We've two more to discuss, obviously, but I'm like you. I'm quite optimistic about the Highland League's chances.
The final two ties, both of our kind of Highland League sides are away from home. You've got Turriff at Dunipace and Formartine United against Carnoustie Panmure. I mean, personally, I've not seen anything of Carnoustie or Dunipace, so I don't really know what to kind of judge them against, but what's your kind of takes on? And
do you expect us to know about them as well?
Well, you are the font of all knowledge on this panel.
Wow.
Well, I've got a Dunipace fact for you as well, but one of the episodes of Still Game was filmed there in the Red Hoose pub, so you can have that for free. And
which episode?
I'm not too sure. It wasn't the one that I was in.
No. Viewers, look up Dan's episode. That's a classic.
But obviously, I mean, Turriff are stepping in for Banks of D in that game. I think it's a decent tie. For Turriff, they'll have the second shot of a chance of a Scottish Cup run, and if you get through this one, you've got a chance of landing a good tie in the next round. For Martin United, I think we'll go to Carnoustie Panmure with quite a lot of confidence because, Rothes, I think, gave Carnoustie a decent game. Carnoustie aren't going particularly well in the Midlands League, so I'd be quite hopeful that for Martin, given that they've played some good stuff this season, that they can get through that tie. So yeah, I mean, looking at all of those ties involving the Highland League teams, I think there's plenty of reason for optimism.
Excuse me. I mean, the Turriff one, it's sort of, if they were to get through, I mean, it's kind of, obviously they'll have to win, but it's sort of house your luck a wee bit. It's kind of straight, obviously not to Banks of D's cost, but kind of would be a good story for Turriff. I know Jamie Watt and Roy McBain for Banks of D watched Dunipace, and they felt they had a good chance of getting through, and I think Turriff will be similarly optimistic because the thing is as well, Aaron Reid and Ewan Clark in the form they're in, they can't stop scoring. When you've got guys like that in form at the top end, it gives you a great chance. Carnoustie v Formartine, I think, could be very close. I mean, they caught Rothes out, Carnoustie again with a quick start, got 3 goals in front. I don't think that'll happen to Formartine, but I think it could be a very tricky tie. But overall, I think out of those 6, I'm going to be really upbeat and say we'll get 5 through.
Funny enough, that 5 was the number that I was thinking of as well. So
I hope we get all 6, but I'll say
that would be the dream.
I'm going to go for all 6 then. I think 4 or 5. But yeah, I think plenty of reason for optimism. I would hope at least 4.
It looks like there's going to be some great ties and some great results, hopefully. That's it for the Highland League Weekly preview show. Keep an eye out on the website for all the latest news, and obviously on Monday for the next episode of Highland League Weekly with highlights from Nairn Strathspey and Wick's big day out against Benverb in the Scottish Cup. And enjoy the football wherever you are this weekend.